Hi, welcome to another episode of PX and the Art of Programming. My name is Perry, and I am the author of the program PX, a program that is still a work in progress, and it will be a work in progress for the next 10 years at least, I think. I have about 20 years to go in total because I am almost 60 years of age. And I will not live forever. But let's assume that I will reach the age of 80. Then I have 20 years to go. And already I have worked on this project for 30 years. So when the happy time comes, when my work is done as a human being, then I will have worked for 50 years on this project. 50 years well spent. The art of programming is that you write meta data that is perfect. You write metadata that has no improvement possible. There is nothing to add to the metadata, and there is nothing to take away from the metadata. When software, a program, a function, a module has reached that stage, then it is perfect. And to reach that stage is the art of programming. In the first episode, which is also called px1micro, part 1, and this is part 2, I have explained what an information system is. And there I have stated that an information system is a collection of data. The data is entered by the users, and the users can search in the data and see what is in the database or databases. It can be a group of databases. It doesn't matter. That is an information system. And not every user can enter or modify data, and not every user can see all the data. There are restrictions, privileges, just like in Unix. Not every user can see the contents of a certain directory, for instance. In a perfect information system, not every user can see the dates of birth of every other user. Maybe the date of birth is secret. In a perfect information system, you would have a switch for such a privilege, if needed. Because information is value in itself. Information has a value. And it should not be accessible for free. Unless. It's all about the art of programming. This is no this is not just a computer program. PX is not just a program. It is a study to the art, a study of the art of programming. I have studied philosophy, and I started in 1998. It's about 21 years ago, 20 years ago, around that time. And there I have learned about the work of the German philosopher Gottlob Frege. It's all about the art, and takes some time to sit back and listen to my voice and listen to my thoughts. Because you have to bring your thoughts to a low level to get in your alpha mode or beta mode or whatever mode. The mode means calmness. Don't touch your keyboard when you are not sure what key to hit. If there's one thing that is against the art of programming, then that is typing away to produce pages of code. That is against the rules of the art of programming. Be silent, shut up, and listen. And later on, when you start to program yourself, you be silent, you shut up, and you listen to your heart before you start typing away. You get? Well, Gottlob Frege. There he is, Gottlob Frege, wiki. Friedrich Ludwig Gottlob Frege. He was born in 1848 and he passed away in 1925. He is understood by many to be the father of analytic philosophy, concentrating on the philosophy of language and mathematics. He has stated in his days that there was no printing firm that had the technology to print out his idea of language. He worked with diagrams, with arrows, and no printing firm could produce that kind of typography, you might add. Well, I don't have that problem in stating what I believe is the proper use of language, because I have set up my own system to produce sentences. Yep. My professor in logic once said to me, almost astonished, and he asked me, "Are you trying to disprove Gottlob Frege?" And I said to my professor, "No, I totally agree with Gottlob Frege. Frege. Totally agree with him. And we are more than a century ahead in time." Right. Let's get on with where we were the last time. The last time I stopped at this function, it's quite a long one. Normally I don't write such long functions, and this function sets the value of a px1micro by text, and the text is given to the function in two parameters, namely a pointer to the first character and a numeric value containing the length of the string. And the function should do two things. First of all, it should set the content of the micro according to the content of the text, and it should tell in this writable parameter if the setting of the micro went okay. Because this value, the pointer, might point to whatever piece of garbage. Huh? Please note that the len of the text has a type, and the type is pxn. Well, let us look up pxn. I am working with Xcode. It's not perfect, but almost perfect. I have not seen anything produced by Microsoft or the open source community that has come with something even close to the programmer friendliness, not the user friendliness, but the programmer friendliness of this IDE, Integrated Development Environment. So I just hit Shift Command F, and then a box will open, and I can type in a regular expression, and the expression that I have typed is typedef.pxn, meaning give me all the lines that contain typedef and the characters pxn. Yeah? And then it comes up with 2 in the px0 type header, and here there's also a typedef, but it's on a higher level, and I won't use that in this. This one type default. I meant this one. Yeah. What is a pxn? Well, a pxn is an unsigned integer for 64 bits. The uint64 type, you can look it up. This is ISO standard for 64-bit integers. So, from this we learn that the px1micro, its value can be set with a pointer denoting to a string of characters with a maximum length of 10 to the power of 18 characters. That's quite huge. This is what I call the art. And you believe me that if you feed this function with a string starting with some value, and it has a length of 10 to the power of 18 characters, this function will finish. And if the number can be interpreted, then the success will hold the value 1, and the micro will be initiated. Well, the maximum value for now of the micro is the number Google, meaning 10 to the power of 100. So that is the art. Well, I will not go into the detail of this function. Quite some lines of code. So maybe about 300 lines minus... it's about 200 lines of code. And again, mostly the functions are a bit are short. I would like a function to take in 1 page on my monitor. So you can see the content of a function in a glance. And the reason that I did not use that chopping up into multiple parts for this function is because I want this function to have the ultimate speed. And no jumping around and pushing return addresses on the stack. You get? And for instance, here I use the goto statement. It's an ugly way of programming, but it is needed in this case for the performance factor. Well, just keep it in mind. For instance, the data is stored in MySQL. And the output of MySQL can be some kind of an integer value, of course. But mostly you will work with the textual output. And you will receive a number from MySQL in a textual form. And then you have a pointer to a character, you have a length, and you want to store it as a micro as fast as possible. Right or wrong? If you have data from an external source, from a spreadsheet, then the numbers and then the spreadsheet export will be tab delimited or comma separated values or whatever. Then the numbers will be in textual format. And you want to interpret those textual representations of numbers as fast as possible. Therefore, I decided to make this a long function without calling other functions. Well, you can look at the content of this function if you would like. You can the code, the source code, you can get it from me if you want it. Maybe I will put it on archive.org. Maybe that's the proper way to store it. But for now, if you just give me a quick response on my YouTube channel, I will send you it. It's not so big. It's in a compressed way. This about the art of programming. Here I make a little sidestep. Here in my apartment, I have a machine and it operates as a server. And I have a network addressed storage system. And this server is called the slaughterhouse. And once it's a machine that my daughter has used. And she named it the slaughterhouse. And well, what's her choice of naming a machine? Anyway, this machine runs px. Here it is. And this machine also stores a backup to the network addressed storage system. And here it's a folder and it's at the official name of the server. It is the backup, the BUP server. This is the address where I live, Rodenburgstraat, is where I live. And MBP is MacBook Pro number 1. I have several MBPs here. And here you see the dates of the backup. And the last backup was of this morning. And what is backed up? Well, it's my own database, DB Perry. DBLETS is where I'm working on, a LED system. And DB Two Hands 2. And this is the database that I showed in px1micro part 1, the former episode, what it's all about. So it's for my friend Wim. He makes a lot of movies, films of bands, performers here in the region. And this is what I would want to tell you about. I came onto it. Every day this server stores not only a copy of the databases, but also a copy of all the metadata. Because a PIC server, by nature, holds the metadata, the program, and all that there is needed for the program itself is stored in the resource. Now, and as you can see, the PX resource in a compressed format is only 57 megabytes. So if you want this file, I'll send it to you. And you can expand it, and you need Xcode, of course. But if you have a Mac and you go all the way, then you ask for an account for programming, accounting stuff, and I think I'm convinced it is free of charge. You just have to register yourself. And I did that a long time ago. I haven't paid diddly for my programming tools. I used to pay for it. I used to work with MetroWorks, the American integrated development environment. And then I switched over to Xcode, and since I switched over to Xcode, I have never paid for the integrated development environment stuff. Okie dokie. Back to where we were. To the art of programming. Here you can see that the function microValueSet has been named microValueSet, while the structure itself also contains the name micro. So why microValueSet? It's obvious that in the micro, it is the micro values that are set. But I named this method microValueSet to distinguish this function in its name itself from other functions that also set values. Because to set a value is a very common thing in a programming environment, in a program. And if I look at the header file for other examples, it's here microValueSet. Here microValueGetByte, microValueGetBool. So micro. And there are some methods like equals and is greater than and is less than that do not contain the term micro, but they will. Believe me. Just for, I don't know why I left it out, but they will. But I'm still working on this. I got 20 years to go to make this implementation of the micro completely perfect. Right. Here we were, microValueSet. then what you can see is that there is a return type, and it's called px status. In the language Pascal, there you have two kinds of modules. The one is called a function, and the other is called a procedure. A function, by definition, has a return value, and a procedure not. In the language C that I use, there are only functions, and you can define a function with a return type void, meaning there is no return type. And a void function is equal to a procedure in Pascal. Agree? Right. Well, in this program, in this language environment, all modules have a return value. And this return value will inform the calling module, the calling piece of metadata, if the execution went okay. Because a perfect program will shout out loud when something goes wrong. And it will produce a calling stack for the programmer. If something goes wrong somewhere down below in the machine, then that function will fail. Then the function that called that function will fail. Then the function that called that function will fail. The whole trace upwards will fail, and it will produce a log. And the programmer can see in the log where the error occurred at first, and see the whole trace. This reduces the time to spot an error by many factors. Once I had a demo of a program written in PHP, and it was a website, of course, and the one who demonstrated the program pushed on some buttons, opened some screens, and all kind of information appeared on the screen, and the person in question, said, well, this is just debugging stuff. And once the program has finished, then this all will be gone. The debugging software will be removed. That's a big no-no. There's no way to remove debugging, no sensible reason to remove debugging statements. In this software environment, there is this macro, px_debug. If you turn it off, which is on the server that I just showed you, there it is turned off. But on my development machine, it is turned on. So this statement is executed always. I will tell about this statement later on. Right. px status, what is it? So every function has to return a px status. What is the perfect way to define a status for every function in your project? What you do not want is too many types. And what you do not want is too less types. It must be perfect. enum, sorry. Enum. Sorry. There it is. I see now that there is one status that might be useful in the future, but can be removed. And this status is called px running. I haven't removed it yet, but I doubt if it is appropriate. But let it be for now. Huh? And there are 3 other states that a function can return to the calling function. And the first is px user stop. And that means that a user has aborted the function. You can imagine that a function takes a long time. It will produce an interface doing the very important stuff. Step 13 out of 1132. Estimated time of arrival, 3 days and 7 hours and 14 seconds. And then the user hits the button cancel. And then the system will ask, are you sure you want to cancel this very important job? And the user says, yes, I want to cancel. And then the function will terminate with a px user stop. So, yeah, there's no need to, there's no error occurring. The user has terminated. That's it. The user stop also occurs when the hard disk is out of space. Well, the most important, most occurring status is the px OK, and that means all things went fine. And the last one here defined is px_ko, and it means error. I could have also used px_ko of named this state as px_error, but I kind of liked to just turn around the 2 letters, OK and KO from knockout. I thought it was some aesthetic. And px_error, error has a nasty smell to it. Huh? Hence px_ko. And I think I'm going to remove px running. Oh, anyway, here we have the parameters, and there is also something to say about these parameters. You see, they all start with the phrase, the letters, the phrase the. The value, the len, the success. Here we have 3 local variables, and they start with the phrase my. So, here we have this, and these are character pointers. These are 2 bytes, 2 characters. Huh? My int is negative. My exponent is negative. So if a variable starts with the letters my, then it is a local variable. If a variable starts with the letters the, it is a parameter. Yep. I claim this to be perfect. There is an other way of naming variables, and that is to use the type of the variable in the name. And I find this not so informative as this choice. You get? So the for parameters, my for local variables, and its for the variables of a struct. So a px1micro, its microdata, and its microdata has its integer, its fraction, its negative, its exponent negative. So here we have three variants, namely the for a parameter, my for a local variable, and its for a variable defined, declared, I wanted to say, on a struct. Get back to the pxh file. Here, it's a private field of the struct px1micro, its microdata of type px1microdata. What is microdata? Microdata is here. And its integer, its fraction, its negative, its, well, you get it, huh? So its is for the variables, fields of a struct, my for the local variables, and the for the parameters. And we have a third way of naming variables, and that is just using a letter, in this case p, and p stands for pointer. And p max means the maximum of the pointer. So if a variable has almost no meaning, then we use a simple p. Yeah. Well, the code that is written here below won't improve if I write a my pointer. My pointer is maximum value. P is informative enough. Well, P is just a pointer, just as C is just a character. While my int is negative, this variable has a meaning to it. It means that the number that we are interpreting is a negative number. Hence, it has a long name. My integer is negative. My exponent is negative. It's the art of programming. I believe this is perfect. Another one here. If we interpret a number, it could be that the text starts with a series of spaces. And we have to skip these spaces. How do we do that? Well, as long as the pointer denotes to a space, we will continue. If it is not equal to a space, we will break out of this loop. The loop is an endless loop. Here we advance the pointer, and if the pointer is equal to the maximum pointer, then we have reached the end of the string. And the maximum pointer is equal to the starting pointer, p becomes the value, plus the length. And I could have written a space like single quote, space, single quote. But is this a space? Or is this two spaces? Two spaces, of course, will produce an error in this case. But suppose you write this. This is also a single space, and this is a double space. But how can you see that this is a double space and this is a single space? Maybe you had a rough night with too much friends and too much vodka. How do you then see the difference between this and this? You get? Therefore, in the art of programming, I have defined this macro. Here it is. And there are lots of them. Space, percentage, hyphen, ampersand, question mark, flashback, flash forward. Comma, tilde or tilde, colon, semicolon. All these are given names, just to be sure that the program is interpreted in the right way. You get? So let me check in a calm way if I have discussed all that is needed to discuss without going into the code itself. So short names for variables means that these are obvious variables, and long names for variables mean that they have a meaning. For instance, my error found. This should not be done using a letter R of E. If E, return px OK. So it's my error found. The code has to be obvious to read. Comments should have a date, an ISO date attached to it. It's a discipline that I've used only the last years. So this is older code, and I did not use the date discipline yet. And here you see in my error found, if the reading of the text has stopped while the end of the text was not reached, something went wrong. An error was found. And if the error was found, then we immediately return px OK. It means the function itself, nothing was wrong. But this statement is not executed. And if I want to be double, triple sure that the success parameter is not set accidentally, then I would add this. Sorry. An OK Boolean result, also a success, sorry. The success. The success. OK Boolean does a check. On a pointer to a Boolean value. First it checks that the pointer is indeed filled. And furthermore, it checks that the content of the Boolean pointer is empty. If you hand over to a px function a place to store a 1 in case all went fine, then that address should be empty. You might argue, well, why is that needed? You just reserved an address and the calling function can interpret the value anyway. Yes, but the calling function has to be sure that the address is empty, just to avoid silly mistakes. Maybe you have 3 locations, all single byte locations, 2 of which are in use for some purpose. The third is to be used to store some data in it, and you give the address of one of the first 2 to store the data into. And then the OK Boolean pointer macro will fail. Here at the beginning of the function, this statement would fail if you call micro value set with the address that is already filled with data. And this I will show to you how this works. We will go to the testing environment. Let me check here. Test 1, 2. This is Dutch. Const char my pointer becomes 1, 2, 3. Px my everything went okay becomes 56. Not okay, of course. And then I call px, first declare a micro, px1 micro m my pointer, the length of my pointer, and then the address of my everything went okay. You get? I'll type in this statement B as a boolean, and it makes it 0, 0 it out, just to be able to put a breakpoint here. Huh? Now this should fail. Agree? Let's see if it fails. I have as a scheme only to compile at level 1, because at the moment I'm programming at level 2. So it won't compile on that level. Now here we have a break. I have standard 2 breakpoints in the error logging. So if px encounters a situation that was not foreseen, in this case it is, in this case, back to my thing, it is this statement. The success is not a valid Boolean pointer to store a value into, because it is already taken, you might argue. Well, I'll just step ahead. It will break again. It will break again. It will break again. It will break here. It will break there. And now we'll have a look in the log file. I'll take the whole log file. Here it says px1micro value set.cpp. That's the name of the source file. Huh? Line 120. Not empty bool pointer. The success. The other error, px1micro.hpp 46. No execution of micro value set, the string, the len, the result. Now with this info, you can go to this source file. Oops, I'm sorry. This source file. There we go. This micro value set.cpp, line 120. Yeah? This was the location of the first error. And then the second error was reported by px1micro.hpp, line 46. And over here. px1micro.hpp, line 46. Yeah. So this is how the art of programming works, in that sense that the program itself has a debugging environment into it also. Of course, there are situations in which you are more than happy that there is something like a GDB. Of course. But px itself will report any unexpected situations and give a complete trace to the location where the error actually occurred and to the starting point of the process that led to the error. I'm about to round up. There was a moment I was programming and I started a testing job, a huge one, namely test accounting. It's a test, the complete test is over here. This was the test that was running. This is a huge test. And this test failed after, say, 2 minutes. There was no information from Xcode. It just said, program terminated due to fatal error. I had no idea where the error came from. I did not change any accounting software. Dus, yeah, the only thing that could have happened was that I had, and it turned out to be true, I had changed something way, way, way below in the machine. And the accounting software caused that piece of program, modified program, to run, and that crashed. Without any debugging info. It took me about 20 minutes to locate the error. Without any help from Xcode. That is what I call the art of programming. So you don't have to rely on a debugging system. It is nice if it works. It will speed up the programming. It will take you less hours to debug, of course. But it is not impossible. for the same reason, it is quite doable for me to do testing and stuff on Ubuntu Linux with GDB. GDB is not as advanced as Xcode. But I did a lot of debugging. When I first moved over to Linux, there were troubles, things and stuff with things like rounding and other types of calculations and things that were a little bit different under Linux than on the macOS Unix. Very tiny differences, but there were differences, fatal differences. And I tracked them all down, using mostly the built-in debugging of PX itself. That is what I call art of programming. So for the last part of this episode, here you find this macro, px.rsrc. And you have also seen this one, px.begin. And px.exec and px.begin will be the subject of my next episode of PX and the art of programming. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I have interested you into the art of program and to join me in the search for the perfect language. The perfect language system. The goal is of this project to enable it for anyone to set up their own information system. You heard me correct, eh? Just by using Linux, MySQL, Apache for the HTML handling as far as needed. So it is PX itself is an HTTP server, but some stuff is done by Apache quite fine, like streaming video. So Apache, MySQL, Linux, and PX. And you can program on the low level in C, in the C that I am just showing you at this moment, or you can program on an application level. And then you can program from within your browser on a server somewhere. And you don't need root access to the machine. You can write an application. Yes, it's gonna be days of freedom. Freedom for the children of God. No, I'm serious. I'm not kidding. I think it is a menace to society that big software firms like Oracle and PeopleSoft and you name them are holding all the playing cards when it comes to information systems. Yeah? Right. And then I thank you very much for your attention and the patience that you had with me. And I hope that you learned something from it and that I have inspired you to join me. See you at the next episode of PX and the Art of Programming.